Well, good morning. I got distracted by a text message, which was why there's that little delay, actually, of Lyle Shelton from Australia, of all people, who was over for the conference. So, good morning and welcome to Solid Ground, everyone. It is wonderful to have you here, and it's nice to be back. Because, of course, did not do the show last Thursday. We had the forum on the family. I'll talk a little bit about that and a few other issues. In fact, I'm going to talk about an issue this morning close to my heart. But one I wasn't planning to talk about, but I was reading the news last night and got quite angry. It's to do with John Key and Helen Clark, so I'll share a few thoughts there. But first and foremost, welcome to Solid Ground, to particularly first-time listeners and viewers. Great to have you here. This is a show for about 20-30 minutes every Tuesday and Thursday morning where I talk the topics of the day, political topics, cultural topics, social, ethical topics, and just delve a little bit more deeply into them and give my thoughts. But really importantly on this show, it's live. So I'm coming to you live from Auckland, where the wind has stopped. Aucklanders will know about that. It's been a windy few days. But coming to you live from Auckland, and if you're on Family First Facebook page or Family First YouTube channel, you can send me comments. So you can either comment on what I'm discussing, or if you've got a question yourself or something you'd want me to address, well, let me know. And I'll do my best to answer those. So if you see my eyes darting to the side like now, you'll know that's because I'm reading the comments here as they're coming on through. And there's a whole lot of them, excuse me, as always. Harrison, wonderful to have you back. Just make sure you don't give the hot chocolate to the dog. That's all I'll say. But no, it's lovely to have you along. You'll be pleased to know Mrs. O'Connor is also a great fan of the hot chocolate in the morning. Lynette, lovely to have you here. Rosie, good morning. And for first-time viewers, I do spend about a minute or two at the start welcoming everyone. I just love this little community. Actually, it's not little, it's a big community now of people who are watching. Good morning to Michael, lovely to have you here. Yolanda, welcome, good morning. Catherine's telling me the fires are roaring and the coffee, that is fantastic. Well, I've got my coffee cup here. In fact, there's a whole lot more people here in New Zealand who have the Solid Ground mug now because we were selling them at the conference or the forum, and we've sold out an entire box, huge box of mugs have gone, so I'm pleased about that. Good morning there to Nigel, lovely to have you along. It sounds like it's wet and cloudy down there. Dee Dee is welcoming all the diggers, lovely to have you along. Chris there from Napier, good morning. Ian, always lovely to have you here as well. We've got Darren, we've got the foggy vibe, so you, well, where I am, as I look out the window, cloudy, but fortunately not. Fortunately not. Dennis is saying good morning. Dennis, guys, if you haven't checked out his Leadership is Changing podcast, I strongly suggest you do. Dennis is one to follow. Philippa, good morning. Telling us about, by the way, thank you for being part of the forum, but she's referencing that the flight out on Saturday was crazy, and I can imagine. I said, my property here, we've actually got only a few weeks left in it. As you may or may not know, Rachel and I are moving. So the packing is underway. Clearly not the computer equipment. But the storm over the last few days has absolutely made a mess of the place. So I've really got to go out there and do quite a bit of work to clean up. Guys, as I say, lovely to have you along. No shortage of things to talk about. Just wanted to particularly thank all of you who turned out to the conference or the forum. I don't know why I keep calling it a conference, but I do. Rosie's noting that Bob supposedly was not happy that my Solid Ground mugs sold out first and fully. It was an in-joke between Bob and I because we have a whole lot of mugs, if you know. We've got Solid Ground mugs, we have Daybreak mugs, Family First mugs, McBlog mugs. There are mugs for Africa. And it's always been a bit of an inside joke between Bob and I of which ones would sell out more. I think I was strategic insofar as I had my wife doing the selling, and that's all I will say. Jarena, lovely to have you along as well. Thank you for being part of this morning. The forum, it was great. So over 650 people at the Dewdrops Event Centre. So that's here in Auckland. And that's that huge Pacific-themed place out Manukau Way by Rainbow's End, by the Whero whitewater rafting. Amazing. And many of you are on at the moment. It was just so great to meet a number of you in person. I enjoy engaging here online, but it's something quite cool in person. And we had amazing people and speakers. And this is just one of the photos. I couldn't get Bob. This is at the very end of the conference. Bob was being assailed by a whole number of people off to the side. But this is with, so from my left, so where my face is, this literal face talking to you at the moment, is Carolee Smith. She was from Australia. She talks about women's rights and the reality of biological sex. And Carolee's basic story is she is calling out biological men who are playing in women's sports teams. And because of that, she's been hauled before the Australian courts and found guilty, effectively, for calling biological men men. And I think you just need to let that sit and settle in your mind for a moment. That's how crazy our world is becoming, and our Australian cousins, sadly. That ultimately, calling a biological man a man will see you accused of violence. And that's the other element. And she sums it up very well herself. She says, if you can redefine what a woman is, you can also redefine what violence means. And in Australia now, violence no longer means physically hitting someone. It's using words that might offend someone. So that's Carolee Smith. She was amazing. Next to her is Jeff Johnson. He's from Focus on the Family USA. So we have Focus on the Family here in New Zealand. In fact, they were at the forum. We had a whole lot of benches or tables at the back where everyone from Focus on the Family, Family Life New Zealand, Maxim, Penny Marie and Let Kids Be Kids, JH Ranch, Aotearoa and others all were. But Jeff's from Focus on the Family USA, and very similar to New Zealand insofar as Family First and Focus on the Family, promotes family values. He was talking around the wider dynamics within the LGBTIQ plus community, as himself having been a gay man, now married, I think with 3 kids if I remember. So he was amazing. Then there's some strange guy there in the middle, wearing the usual uniform for men these days. Next to me is Dawn Hawkins. I've actually done a podcast with her for Family Matters. That'll be out in a week or so. She talks about sexual exploitation. She was amazing. And talking really how pornography, sex trafficking, prostitution is all tied in, and how she has led some very successful campaigns in the United States. So Dawn was amazing. And then there's Amanda Ackman at the end. I mentioned her last week. I was taking her around a variety of places here in Auckland to give talks, and she was incredible. And she talks about euthanasia and assisted dying in Canada. And it was quite good timing, guys, for her to be down because of the ACT Party having just dropped its new bill to say, hey, we need to expand euthanasia in New Zealand and be like the Canadians. So she was a very good antidote to that, saying, well, you don't want to be like us. Literally 1 in 20 deaths is now by euthanasia. So you heard me right, 1 in 20 deaths is by euthanasia now. And euthanasia is the 5th leading cause of death, or the condition. So, there's coronary issues, there's pulmonary issues. But euthanasia is the 5th largest, and 1 in 20. 1 in 20, just terrible. I don't know if you can see this, when I found this funny from the forum. Looks like, firstly, a number of people have commented on my red pants, but sometimes you've got to splash out. So I found this funny. This looks like I'm checking my social media, but actually we were using a system online, an app, to get all the questions. So I look distracted a lot of the time. But great to have you all along. And just to let you know too, with the forum, most of the videos, we videoed most of it, if not all of it, will be released over the coming weeks and months. So if you missed Dawn, if you missed Jeff, Carolee, we had 2 detransitioners. We had Israel and Maria Folau speaking, and live on Zoom as well. We will have all of that available to you soon. And Simply Green has a wonderful quote, which is one of my favourites. Not quite from Voltaire. It's a paraphrase of some of his writing. Those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. And so Simply Green will be referencing what's happening in Australia and Carolee at the moment. And it's quite true. If you begin to distort reality, and if you begin to change the meaning of language or words, you can actually make people do very crazy to atrocious things. So, yeah. Now, speaking of atrocious, this absolutely got me furious last night. In fact, if you're following my Facebook page or LinkedIn, you will see me very frankly expressing my disgust at this. This is what I was not planning to talk about this morning, but you know me, when it comes to communist China, I get fired up. And the long and the short is John Key and Helen Clark have decided that it's a perfectly good idea to travel to Beijing tomorrow, I believe, to attend a military parade to celebrate supposedly the communist victory over the Japanese at the end of the Second World War. So they're attending in their private capacity, but it is appalling at so many levels, and I am actually quite angry. This is my angry face. I am quite angry that this is happening and that they've chosen to do it, although it tells you a lot about their character or lack of it. It is just appalling. I really am struggling to find the right words for it. So first and foremost, let's be really clear. They are attending a military parade for an autocratic communist nation, which is also going to have the likes of President Putin from Russia, Kim Jong-un from Korea, and others. So Helen Clark in particular, who makes a big, and by the way, I'm not trying to protect John Key here, but Helen is really big on X and in the media, talking up human rights. She was down at the Gaza border with Egypt, I might stress, the other week, talking about the situation there, and yet has absolutely no problem attending a Chinese Communist Party event alongside dictators like Putin and Kim Jong-un. I think that is the definition of a hypocrite. And it also says that she has no moral compass, and as a consequence, nothing she really says or writes about should be taken with much, if any, should be taken with a grain of salt, basically. She has absolutely no consistency in this regard. You cannot go around lecturing New Zealand and the world on human rights issues and then attend a military parade alongside Putin, Kim Jong-un, and others for a communist parade in Beijing. It is just appalling that she's doing it. And again, has chosen to. No one has been forced to do this. New Zealand is actually rightly sending its diplomats there. This is what country-to-country events look like. It's appropriate that New Zealand sends its diplomats. There is absolutely, there is absolutely no reason for John Key and Helen Clark to attend this. The second thing is, it's a military parade. Why do I mention that? Well, secondly, as a second point, the first is, as I mentioned, the second point, it's a military parade. They wouldn't have attended Donald Trump's one in democratic America. Not in a heartbeat would Helen or John turn up to Trump's one. And to be honest, rightly so. But communist China, oh no, we're there. We're there in spades. Of course, China is the one funding and arming Putin in the attack on Ukraine. That's beyond a doubt. Again, it's just appalling. In fact, I think I might be right that even Iran is going to have representatives there. And you begin to see this rather, I'm trying to think of the right words because I am actually quite angry, this dirty little web that they are part of and they're choosing to be part of. I just want to keep coming back to this. There is no reason for them to be there. They have actively chosen to attend. And you do have to ask the question, and I will ask the question, and I can't answer it, is how compromised are they? My wife has just sent me a text rightly because I've got distracted. I need to also explain the history. So why are they doing this? But my wife, Rachel's quite correct too. You have to understand the history. So Xi Jinping, the president of China, the Chinese communists are making a big thing of this military parade to celebrate their supposed victory, and I say that carefully, their supposed victory over Japan. The unfortunate truth for the communists in China is they had pretty much nothing to do with the victory over the Japanese. The communists in China hid in the hills. Mao Zedong and others hid in the hills. And they waited until basically the nationalist forces, supported by the Americans, won the day. To be fair, Japan effectively got defeated elsewhere and then withdrew from China. But millions of Chinese died in the struggle against Japan right from the 1930s. So actually the fight between Japan and China started well before the official start of the Second World War. So this was basically Chiang Kai-shek, if you know that name, first president of Taiwan. That's where they fled after the communists attacked them. So I've put a few threads there. So long and short, this is the communists trying to rewrite history. This is the Chinese communists, which now Clark and Key are complicit with, of rewriting history to try and make it sound as if the communists had something to do with the defeat of the Japanese forces. If you know your history, they did not. The communists hid in the hills. The nationalist forces and others Chinese fought and died. And once Japan was defeated, primarily by the Americans, and they began to leave China, guess what Mao Zedong and the communists did? They attacked the nationalist forces. They attacked their own people. They effectively ignited a civil war. The nationalists, obviously after years and years fighting, the Japanese were exhausted, and they were eventually defeated. I think in 1949 they were pushed out of China, and that's why they ended up in Taiwan. And you can understand why these communists want Taiwan back. They want to complete their fight. But the idea that the Chinese communists had anything to do with the defeat of the Japanese in the Second World War is ludicrous. It's not historical. And this is again why it's so disgraceful and appalling that Key and Clark are going, because they are now complicit in supporting this ahistorical narrative. They are helping Xi Jinping, that's the current president of China, and the Chinese communists bed in a false narrative. This is why it's just so wrong at so many levels. So look, lots of comments coming in. DD's right, it is hypocritical. Again, particularly for Clark, and I really want to stress, I'm not defending Key. Key's just going to go really quiet on this. He'll probably have one simple line. But he's far too close to the Chinese regime for reasons I don't fully understand. Probably just still wants to be relevant. But Clark in particular is totally hypocritical, as DD says. I said only a couple of weeks ago she was down at the Gaza-Egyptian border, which in itself is not just hypocritical and ironic. She was talking up a big game about the Palestinians and human rights, but more than happy to be now in China. China, by the way, that persecutes far more people than what is happening in Gaza. Okay, think about the 1 million or so Uyghurs, Muslim Uyghurs, in concentration camps in China. Nothing, actually, from the Muslim community by and large, and nothing from Helen Clark. Think about the Falun Gong who are persecuted and have forced organ transplantations. We're not making this up. Actually, I've got an interview on RCR you can listen to. Think about the House Christians who are persecuted. Think about the Hong Kongers who are persecuted. In fact, people like Jimmy Lai, Andy Lee, who are languishing in Hong Kong's prison. Do you think Key and Clark might like to go and swap with them? No, they're going to be too busy hobnobbing in Beijing with dictators like Putin, Kim Jong-un. And again, you can hear it in my voice, I'm angry that they are even prepared to do this. And Harrison sums it up to, we have enough unnecessary wars. We do. But these guys are actually implicitly supporting, as I said at the start, Clark and Key are supporting a regime which in itself supports the likes of Iran and supports the likes of Russia in their wars. It's just appalling. DD saying that 50 million people potentially were killed by the CCP. I don't know the exact numbers, but I do know it's large. The purges that the communists actually are still doing now, certainly what they did through their Cultural Revolution, is absolutely appalling. So look, I'm just angry and upset about this. In fact, myself and Lewis Awall, we actually cooperate in this space, 2 former MPs on China. We've just drafted a letter, an op-ed. We'll see if the media publishes it. It's slightly more restrained than I am this morning, but I am deeply upset. Excuse me, about this. So, yeah, I might have to actually leave it there, not because I'm upset. I can now look at the time and see I've ranted long enough. But yeah, so look, as I say, it's just wrong on so many levels. It's not historical. The Chinese communists did not defeat the Japanese in any way. They hid in the hills and waited till the other Chinese who fought were exhausted. Then the communists attacked and took over the country. Secondly, Xi is an autocratic dictator. 3, the other people attending. Putin. Who wants to be anywhere near Putin? Let alone Kim Jong-un, representatives Iran and elsewhere. There is no need for Key and Clark to be there. And then they're implicitly supporting the behaviours of the CCP. I keep mentioning the likes of the Hong Kongers. Never forget what's happening to the Tibetans. Obviously the daily threats to Taiwan, the persecution of House Christians, Falun Gong, the Uyghurs. Where does the list end? The interference here in New Zealand. Clark and Key are implicitly supporting all of this because fundamentally, guys, they do not need to be there. Okay, we're sending our diplomats there, which is perfectly appropriate for state-to-state relationships, but Clark and Key have decided it's perfectly appropriate for them as former prime ministers to attend, and therefore they're saying they agree with what China does. Now they'll say no, they don't. I'm not sure actually how they justify their attending, but they do by attending, by actively choosing to be there, support what's happening. And again, very, very upsetting. Anyway, I'll just put this one back up because it's slightly happier, and I will start to wrap up. As others are saying, follow the money. You can't help but wonder. But good question to try and wrap up. Did the forum give me hope? Yes, it did, DD. I mean, with amazing speakers like this, it did. So while the forum talked on a number of challenges, each of them had aspects of hope to share, not only in successes that they've had in their respective countries, but also a belief that we can win the day, which is why we here at Family First exist. It's why we continue to encourage you to watch, read, and listen, get to all our content, support our work. We are incredibly grateful to everyone's support and donations. It's what makes a huge, huge difference to us. Remember, of course, we have lots of different shows and activities. Obviously, me at the moment on Solid Ground. You've got Bob again tomorrow. And then, of course, on Thursday nights, we are back this Thursday. We didn't have political playback last week because, well, of course, we were at the forum. But political playback is back. And as I say, there's lots to watch and read and listen. I've got my latest Substack up. I'm actually talking about the flags. In fact, McGruff is just commented on it, which made me remember. So I did a Substack last week. I'm writing a new Substack this week. Bob, of course, is busy writing his own, which is fantastic. So go to substack.com and look up me and Bob, respectively. This is still the latest not Solid Ground, this is Solid Ground podcast, Family Matters. This was Sharon Quick. She's the anaesthetist who talks you through the realities of what euthanasia is like. The long and the short, they paralyze you so that you can't really breathe, blink, talk, anything. And so you may still be conscious when they actually begin to sedate and stop your heart. I mean, it's just absolutely shocking. Absolutely shocking. The latest RCR interview that I've done is with Dawn Hawkins. If you want to get a bit of a hint of her work, jump on to RCR. It would be lovely to have you. This is my show. Look at that. Not in red pants. So guys, always a pleasure to have you on. As I say, I wasn't expecting to talk China, but as you know, it's one of my hobby horses, and you can probably hear it in my voice and my rant. I'm angry. I have no idea why these guys want to attend. Just disgraceful. Anyway, I'm going to stop there. I should end on a positive. I just hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. As I say, it was great to meet a number of you at the conference. In the meantime, have a great rest of your Tuesday, and I'll see you here on Thursday morning.